I'd like to open the zoning board of appeals meeting for February 20th, 2025. My name is Peter Wozniak. I'm sitting on behalf of David Singer, who's the chair. Unfortunately, his mother has some severe health conditions and he's in. The chair statement, this meeting is being recorded by the zoning board of appeals. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. Is there anyone recording this meeting? Are you recording it?
Recorder?
In accordance with Mass General Law 30A subsection 20G, no person shall address a meeting of the public body without permission from the chair. And all persons shall, at the request of the chair, be silent. No person shall disrupt the proceedings of a meeting of a public body. If after clear warning from the chair, the person continues to disrupt the proceedings, the chair may order the person to withdraw from the meeting. If the person does not withdraw, if the chair may authorize a constable or other officer to remove the person from the meeting. Mr. Chair. Please read the appeal for 6:30.
All right, so application of Sydney St. John for property located at 138 Highland Avenue, assessors map R01 lot 4N, which is located in the urban residential RA zoning district for special permits pursuant to sections 200-4.4 C1 and 200-8.3 of the zoning ordinance in order to allow a farm for growing of flowers on land less than 5 acres at this location.
The appeal has been
Okay.
withdrawn without prejudice. To make a motion to accept.
No motion necessary, Mr.
Okay.
Yes, John. So just real quick, if anybody's here for the very first item on the agenda, Sydney St. John. She withdrew the application without prejudice. What she plans on doing, the ZBA has no authority at this time. So she withdrew the application without prejudice, so will not be heard this evening.
Read the request for approval of the minutes of the meeting.
Yes.
Meetings for-
So we will start with approval for the meeting minutes from December 19th, 2024. Are there any alterations or anything? Have a motion to approve it?
Make a motion to approve. I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Second set minutes.
You need to identify.
Yes, I will do that. Members on the board,
Mark Maloney.
Debbie Jokes?
Eric Green.
Charles Roberts.
Jim Wentz, Peter Wilson. Next time. It's
All right, and so that was approved. And then we have the approval of the minutes of the meeting for January 9th, 2025. It says 2024, but it's 2025.
any corrections or comments?
I'll make a motion, we accept the minutes.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye. Right. Both meetings were approved. So our next application is at 6:45, and so we gotta wait for 6:45. Sorry, folks.
Raise and open it up, or do you want 4 regular members to be?
Or it's full.
Excuse me, without addressing the substance of our matter, can I just ask about who would be seated tonight for the hearing and whether or not we will or won't have a complement of a full board for our presentation?
The only member not here is
David Singer.
this chairperson, David Singer. The other 4 members are here.
Would a fifth, was anybody present last time that would be eligible to vote?
I'm the alternate. I've been here for all these meetings, yeah.
So would he be participating this evening and be eligible to vote? So
Yes.
he would,
That is up to the acting chair.
Yes.
Okay, so we would still need a 4/5 and be participating. Okay. And does the board have any preference as to what we do? I know this is important and I know Mr. Singer has been intimately involved. I would want to be respectful to his personal situation. So I wouldn't want to press on if this board,
The intent of tonight's presentation is to have you give a presentation.
Okay.
Your entire presentation.
on the variance, was my understanding is we were going to close out the variance portion this evening. With the goal.
Yeah, so I also had a conversation with with Chairperson David Singer. The intent for today's meeting, since he's absent, will be for you to complete your presentation relative to the entire project. Whatever you have remaining to present to the board, you would do so this evening. And then the board will consider the variance when Chairperson Singer returns.
Okay, so he would Mullins in and so we would have another meeting in March.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, okay,
The intent of tonight's meeting is just to have you give the presentation so we can get all the information. Obviously, the public's here, it's going to hear that, but we're not entertaining any public input after your presentation.
Finish up what we started last class.
okay. There's a potential that we would leave it open because of the discussion about wanting to do a site visit and a second balloon test. So it would be potentially be open and we would continue it to the March meeting.
Yes.
We would show up at the March meeting, maybe a couple hours early, do a site visit and then come in, close the hearing. And then you would. Okay. Okay, I just want to make sure we're on the same page because if you wanted us to pack up and call it a night, we would rather be on the road sooner rather than later.
You want to watch the hockey game at 8 o'clock.
We don't. So at the end, I mean, we really did think we were focusing on the variance tonight, so we don't necessarily, we might not have everybody that you want to hear from, but let's see how much of it we can get through and minimize what might be left for a March. Because I do still think we want to do the second balloon test if the abutters want us to do it and if this board wants us to do it. So I do still think it would be open, but hopefully we would minimize the topics that would remain open for the March meeting. Which, and can I confirm it's March 13th, the second Thursday?
The March meeting is March 20th, as this meeting is because of a conflict on the second Thursday of the month. So it's this meeting and next meeting is 20th. The rest of the meetings will return to the second Thursday.
Okay, okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So then we process this, we get started with them giving a presentation.
Wait till 6:45. I'll read this. If they will read that into the record, I'll read the continuance and then the board will vote, and then you can open it up to the presentation. I can read the continuance.
Why are you wondering why you're wearing the mask? You're not feeling well?
My wife just got out of surgery. I don't want to bring anything home to her.
Oh.
He's told to stay away from everybody.
Right. On the church.
Good. Yeah, Dr. Old down there, back surgeon. He said it was a textbook case, came out flying. Now she's gonna start weeks and weeks of physical therapy. Then they take her a full year before she gets back to where she is.
My sister.
Dr. Old, about this skinny. I think he was on broccoli. He's a guy, thank God for that at all, yes. He does everything from the top of the head to the bottom.
Most people that I know that have dealt with it.
Yeah.
Because she's recovered, she's had some shots. You know.
He did a few hundred shots for $1,000.
Yeah, we went, yeah, we were down. Seen it. I mean, this is only rain on.
Well, good for her though.
You have to read this.
And continue to the next.
What's
Trying to get out for next surgery.
Okay.
On the boat now.
And so, for the board members that don't know Charles Roberts, he's our new alternate on the board.
Hi, Charles. How you doing?
I almost paid for the seat.
Carol, how you here?
I only found that out on the website. I was looking for something.
What's Charles doing?
Yeah, deja vu.
Meeting with the planning
Deja
board?
I chaired the planning board for 5 years.
Oh,
A while, so a couple years ago, yeah.
just a couple of years now that
Yeah,
you're
took a little break and then I tried to sign back up for the planning board but I was a little late on the draw, but there was an alternate seat available here, so I
It's good to have another young fella.
sit in. Yeah, young is a debatable term.
You guys are on the planning board together. right?
Yeah, we were.
That's it. Welcome back to the board world.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm really happy to be here, yeah.
Mark, I remember when I first heard your name right after our Mark passed away. I said, whoa, wait a minute.
This guy again.
Yeah.
Always gotta have at least one.
Then you have to, you're not fully qualified to be the clerk because you can,
I'm not fully qualified.
you are, you will be. fully
Now.
qualified.
Oh, now I.
It's not too late to screw it
I
up.
was gonna say-
Save yourself.
The other benefit, you get to fill in that chair. Chair over there.
Okay, well, what do you think? We always have like a party of the year, like you tell them, so I'm not gonna have a party of the year. I supervise.
Tell me about it.
Okay, wait, have I do the role?
We're here to play, not to leave.
I'm not here.
I see a lot of my friends and neighbors from Barton Road in physical presence at the hall tonight. Vivi, Mr. O'Neill, Bob. Recognize some faces out there. Hey, everybody.
Hi, Max. Maxwell.
Secondary.
Second.
Function. 44.
We can go on to the next presentation. This one I'll wait.
Just waiting for the clock to tick over. Okay, so application of Jeffrey J. Brusco for property located off Oak Hill Road, assessors map R20 lot 17, which is located in the rural residential RC zoning district for special permit pursuant to sections 200-5.3 E2 and 200-8.3 the zoning ordinance in order to allow up to a 20% reduction of the frontage and area requirements for 2 lots at this location.
Thank you. Mr. Quarren,
Mr. Chairman, we received a request from the applicant for a continuance of the public hearing on his application, special permit application, to the next available zoning board of appeals meeting. Signed by Jeffrey Bresco.
like to make a motion to approve the request for the continuance.
I'll second.
All in favor? Excuse me, before you go around the board, each one of us.
Mark Maloney.
Debbie Jones?
Eric Green.
Jim Wen, Peter Wozniak. Motion to approve.
Wait, we have a chance to say everything, we're here, all neighbors from the neighborhood.
The applicant requested that we hold off. They asked that they can reschedule.
There's they requested a continuance. The appellant. Person who put in the special permit, they requested for a continuance. So they're not here to give a presentation. They're gonna come forward in another meeting to give the presentation.
And are all neighbors highlighted?
Oh, absolutely. There'll be another public notice, that the special permit meeting will be held. Right?
We had a view on that meeting.
So, Mr. Chairman, I can explain. So the way it works, if an applicant has the right to request a continuance of his special permit public hearing, which this applicant did, to the next available ZBA meeting, which is March 20th, 2025, at this location at 6:30. And there will be no further legal ads in the newspaper or butter notification because you're all here and we're making the announcement right now.
This seems like rigging the system against the neighborhood, and it's not fair. You have a plethora. The entire audience is filled from the community of the neighborhood that's impacted by the decision. If I can recognize the board, I'm sorry to interrupt here.
Excuse me. A motion has been made and accepted and this hearing is closed.
I have a question.
This is a circumvention of the public process. You have a plethora of the neighborhood impacted.
Can I respond, Mr. Chairman?
Tonight.
Sir, you're ignorant on the process of how special permit public hearings work. No problem with that. So let me explain it to you. This is the precise manner on how this gets done. An applicant has the right to request a continuance. We read the continuance into the public record. Board is in the midst of taking a vote to accept the continuance to March 20th. That meets all legal requirements of the state and the city of Greenfield's rules and regulations.
So the
Do
board
the
is-
abutters have
so the
a right
board
to
is
continue?
ignorant. So, excuse me, the board is ignorant to the disposition that the neighborhood finds themselves in to attend and follow on top of these continuances? Because this seems to circumvent.
Sir, that's what I'm trying to explain to you, that it's not circumventing any legal manner or rule. This is how the system works everywhere.
So follow-up continuances don't require public notification? Is that what I understand from the announcement?
It does not require a second public notification. That is correct. You're hearing it now, so you heard direct that it's March 20th. So come back March 20th and then
Nobody
you,
had been here tonight to hear it. We would not have known. And you wouldn't have been required to put.
you
something
could
out there.
review the meeting minutes and you would have learned then, and you could check the city calendar. I'm telling you that we met all legal requirements. This conversation's over.
I just want to know.
When did the continuance applied for?
An applicant has the right to request a continuance at any moment before the public hearing starts, which this person did. And the board is voting, if you let him continue, to accept the continuance to March 20th.
This is not a good faith position of the town and the community.
Like I said, sir,
I agree.
This is not the expectation that the.
your
community
ignorance of the
has.
law, it doesn't,
Our ignorance of the law is
doesn't make it
irrespective.
that we're doing anything wrong here.
Is irrespective of the sentiment that is conveyed by the actions of the board. And we expect that the public is represented better. We are here to speak and respond tonight to the solicitors, and they have chosen a method that will obfuscate this process from the public without further notification.
But,
Can
yeah,
I ask a question?
Yeah.
Are we talking about Jeffrey Brusco's application at this point?
yes.
Yes. Okay. I just, there is a lot of emotion in regards to what's going on here. I'll be honest, the application I received was very light on information, so I'm working from a place of ignorance. I have no idea right now
Yeah.
why you are here. And until Jeffrey can be here
Yes.
and present his application,
I was just gonna,
and we can hear from him as to what he's looking for,
I-
then we can proceed and allow you an opportunity to have your piece. That is how it works. He's not even here to defend himself, answer any of
Answer-
our questions, and therefore that will not occur tonight.
We have a vote on
I
the
was
table,
gonna, I
right?
was gonna make that exact same statement, Debbie.
Okay.
The process allows, and I understand the frustration of the public, but the appellant has the ability, has to have the ability to be part of that process.
Absolutely.
You feel we're excluding you, but he would say to us, I didn't have an opportunity at that hearing to give my presentation and respond to the question. So I understand the frustration, but this issue's been closed. And you can get angry at me or the board, but we're following a due process that would be violated if we didn't allow the appellant to participate. So I mean, I get the frustration, but I'm not gonna violate the procedure because people are angry at us, okay? And you can use all the legal language you want. That doesn't change the fact that we've made a decision and we're gonna move along.
I understand the legal position.
Yeah.
Please understand, we are disappointed.
And I fully understand it.
In
Yeah.
the solicitors' tactics in achieving their desired end goal. This is not above board. I think everybody understands the sentiment. Look out at the audience that sits before you. This is 100% of my community that sits adjacent to the subject at hand for this time period. These tactics, this is not above board tactics. We'll see you again at the next interval.
Yeah.
We're all disappointed.
Yeah, there is no tactic to try to avoid a fair and public meeting, okay?
And I guess, my apologies for being this ignorant, but I have no idea why you're upset. I don't know anything about a solicitor. I have no idea why you guys are here right now. The application did not explain, other than what I read out loud, that's all the information I have, and one map.
Well, you can.
So, No,
I
I do understand that, but you keep saying this isn't above board, this isn't whatever. There's no agenda here. There's nothing going on here but the legal proceedings, which is we voted on this and we're going to allow him his continuance and his opportunity, like a citizen, like any other citizen, to come forward and speak their mind. And everyone here will have that opportunity. I am sorry that you're disappointed.
No, and I appreciate
I think
that.
it's with the builder himself.
Okay.
He's referring to the app.
Oh, okay. I thought he was referring to the
And
board.
I-
It was not clear to me.
No.
Yeah, and I
Here,
appreciate the position.
15 people from the community attached to the decision of one person did not show up for this day. There are 15 members of the community here present. We have families, we have commitments, we have work, we have everything. And we made time to come and be heard and to hear and to listen to someone making a proposal that we don't know anything about. We want to have this conversation more than anyone. That's why we are all.
We just
here.
really want to learn like you.
We have to know
We're in the same boat.
We see-
We're all not knowing what's going on. We're all a little frustrated and we're all gonna have to come back on March 20th. Deal with it. To play this.
You know
out.
what,
It's inconvenient.
excuse me, how does the zoning board not know what's going on? You look at the parcel, I urge you, please take the 10 or 15 minutes, drive out to this area. Physically go and view the lot. This abuts and is adjacent to conservation land. The
Did you-
whole purpose of the neighborhood and these laws is to allow for open spaces and conservation and an aesthetic and a property value that is not in alignment
I
with the exception that is being proposed.
Yeah.
And I understand the solicitor is not here to defend their position. That's fine. I urge you, as the board, go and physically experience this space. This is not a space that is just enjoyed by the people you see here today. This is wildlife conservation area in
Okay.
extreme
You-
proximity.
Yeah. Excuse me,
Go-
I
go
apologize, Mr. Brown, for
Hey.
interrupting you.
I'd like to,
You missed.
I want to finish the meeting. I went out there and I did spend time out there and I looked at what was there. And I looked at the documentation we received. It is poor, okay? That would have been fleshed out today. But without that person here, what you're going to say is good to hear, but we need the solicitor to be here to hear that. And without them there, they can't explain what they're doing. I mean, I went out there and I just saw a bunch of dirt with snow on top of it. You know, without appreciating what
Exactly.
it is.
And
So, you know,
did you also make note of the in development, in progress buildings?
Yes,
I moved into this neighborhood in 2018, and the buildings that are in development and in progress have been in this state since 2018, which surely runs afoul of the regulations and intentions of the zoning board and development in Greenfield. And so I ask the committee, we don't have to make a decision tonight. I implore you.
We're not.
The intention of the regulations and the zoning of this property, is this solicitor, are they aligned to the aesthetics,
I
property
appreciate.
values? This is,
I'm gonna call this the quote. We've heard all that multiple times, and I fully understand what you're saying. I was out there, I saw the foundation appearing to be in the ground, you know, without further
no,
information.
sir, in the adjacent buildings where I can drive up and I can show you that there's incomplete siding, where the structure has been exposed to the elements for years on end, where the siding and the sheathing is flapping in the wind. It looks derelict. Is this, if we make an exception for this 20%, where do you draw the line on further exceptions? Because the entire property,
Can I-
and the solicitors,
can I-
everything is, it's a list of
I
exceptions.
gotta
that
stop.
is
Yes, yes.
infinitely long.
But I'm telling you, this is stop right now. And if you don't, we're gonna cut you off. So
Cut me
please,
off.
please
Cut
give
me
us,
off.
give us the professional opportunity to put this in the continuance and discuss all of this in the next meeting, where you'll have all the time in the world to tell me this. But until then, the meeting's done, all right?
I think you're doing a disservice to the public if you don't.
You may feel that way. We also have a legal, we also have a legal procedure.
notification of the next
I
follow-up.
wish I had an
meeting.
officer here. Stop, can we, when we.
Yeah,
when we
let me
shut
just
them
shut
down-
him down right now. Sir, are you gonna allow the ZB to proceed, or must I shut you down?
I will mute myself. Proceed.
Thank you.
Meeting's done. We voted on a continuance and it's.
Was there an actual vote, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, there was.
Okay. $7:00.
Board, please notice the disappointment and frustration in your community that is exiting the hall right now. This is who you serve. This is the community. We'll see you on March 20th.
Thank you.
You could be the chair, so.
Need a police officer with us next one? Probably.
Yeah.
The planning board wasn't like this, was it? Don't tell me to shut them off.
Well, I remember one meeting when Ryan started this, yeah, police officer had to come.
Yeah, 2 months ago we did. The guy turned around and gave everybody the bird in the door and walked out.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
You want us to, at the end of the day, Bob, you want to do this to a body, it's
Well, I-
beyond.
This is the table or the front row, what you say? You can- I thought it was not. No.
Yeah.
Okay, 7 o'clock.
Are you sure?
Oh, yes, yes. All right. This is continued from January 9th, 2025. Application of Veridi Wireless LCC for property located at 0 Fairview Street West, Assessor's Map, Tax Map R24, Lot 7A, which is located in the General Commercial GC zoning district, for variance pursuant to section 200-8.7 of the zoning ordinance in order to allow the construction of a new wireless communication structure comprised of ground-based equipment cabinets and antennas mounted on top of a monopole measuring 170 feet in height with an insufficient fall zone. Mr. Chairman, do you want me to read the second continuance, even though it's 7:15? They are kind of entwined, or are we just going to go with that?
We go with this one right. Just so I'm clear, when I spoke with David Singh, it's intent. I don't know if I want to be clear on what we're doing at this particular here. What you asked me to do is indicate that you folks are to give a presentation that deals with the entire quest and deals also with variance and the special permit are presented at the same time. And that we may have questions about the variance, but we would like you to give the presentation for the entire property.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm very confused. I've had conversations with David Singer, and he made it clear that the focus was gonna be on the variance tonight.
Yeah, but we're combining the presentation as the variance as part of this presentation and also details relative to the special permit. So you're going to hear the commentary about the request for a variance. We're, for expedience, because we've invited them here to also get conversation about special permit. Was that, I mean, I'm trying to, if this is clear.
That is,
I spoke with.
I will read you my understanding. As I understand it, both hearings remain open.
Yes.
We are continuing presenting at the next meeting. The preference is we focus on the variance. Once the board hears what it needs from the applicant, it will, at their option, open the variance discussion to the abutters. If the board is ready to do so this evening. My understanding, based on what I heard before the meeting, is in Mr. Singer's absence, and we would agree, we would continue to the next hearing for any remaining items. And then at that hearing, the board could close it. However, at the same time, as you were saying, Mr. Chair, as we said at the last meeting, because these hearings are both so intertwined, any evidence that's being submitted, we're submitting it to you in the spirit and understanding that it's being considered for both the variance and the special permit, because it wouldn't make sense to come back in a room and restate everything that we've already stated. And therefore, anything we state in this meeting, you are free to use it in our favor or against us in the special permit hearing, or any future hearing until both are closed and deliberated and voted on.
I guess what I'd request is, as best you can, give the presentation that highlights the details for the variance. And if you need to present other information, it's appropriate. I'd like to, at this particular hearing, have you give the presentation highlighting the issues of variance, and then whatever else you feel you need to put in with that, that would be fine.
Perfect. Mr. Chairman? I had a subsequent conversation with Chairman Singer, and he made it clear that, you know, the intent is if you can finish your presentation of the project in its entirety today, your presentation, that'd be preferable. But I heard you say earlier, because of the last minute change, because of his mother's illness, you weren't aware of this, so your folks may not be available to give the complete presentation. That would have to be continued to the next, but if you can do your best to complete your presentation this evening, that is Chairman Singer's preference.
And excuse me, and add to that, if for some reason, because I overheard a conversation, if you feel that that isn't doable and you need to give additional information, we'll discuss how that takes place, you know.
Correct. We would identify, you know, so-and-so is not with us tonight. They didn't think that they were going to be speaking as to the variance. To the extent I can answer your question, someone else on our team can answer your question, we will. But if not, I would suspect that that would get continued to the next meeting. I do have one caveat on that. And that is, I have a conflict on March 20th, which means I would respectfully request that whatever we continue, that it be to the April meeting. So I prefer not to do that, but unfortunately, which is why earlier I asked, is the next meeting March 13th? I actually had that booked on my calendar. And again, I understand these things happen and it is what it is.
I guess the question I have, Eric, is there any time problem with doing that?
I believe if the applicant requests the extension beyond the March 27th date in which a variance decision must be made, which is 100 days from the filing of the application for variance, the applicant can request an extension. Is that what you're doing by requesting the meeting to be continued to April and not March 20th?
Yes, I will go through the calendar with you. I will make sure that you have the 100 days plus, say, 20 additional days to write a decision and file it. And I'll exchange an email or documentation with this board reflecting that that date will be April, whatever the second Thursday in April.
Second Thursday.
So whatever it is, if it's the 10th, then I would agree to extend until April 30th, the timeframe to grant a variance or deny a variance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so Michael Rosen, Roberto Israel and Weiner on behalf of Verity Wireless. With me this evening, George Chanis from Verity Wireless. Also at RA, counsel for AT&T.
Evening. Nice to meet you.
Martin Lavin. I always forget the company. I'm sorry, right. Peter Marchant from C Squared, who's also
Peter Marchant from SAI, agent for AT&T.
Agent for AT&T. And you have with us from my office, Michael Cronin, who can put up the slides like last time. If we just tell him which slides we want on the board, we can put them on there. We have Lou Hodgetts, our engineer. We have Dawn Hayes, who is an environmental engineer that we asked to join us this evening. And we have Steve Hubbard from Verity also. And we have David Archambault also with us, who presented the balloon test and the photo simulations at the last meeting.
Since we need to introduce ourselves also.
Mark Maloney,
Debbie Jokes.
Eric Green, Jim Wynn.
Peter Rosen.
I guess I don't introduce myself yet, do I?
Well, I think you're on your mouth, yes, please.
Yeah, yes.
Harold Roberts.
Thank you. So at our last meeting, we went through a list of topics that we were going to cover. We started with location, and that was presented at the last meeting. I don't think we have anything to add on that. The second presentation that we had at the last meeting was regarding the site design and layout. I don't think we have anything further to add on that. The third topic from the last meeting was the fall zone. So I would like to take up the fall zone at this point. I think there were two things that were submitted that I hope that this board has at this point received. One is a preliminary drawing for construction for a foundation that was based on the presumptive soils. I think that was something that we talked about at the last meeting, that we're asking to not have to cut down trees and do geotech, but we did take presumptive soils and we designed a preliminary foundation based on those presumptive soils, and that was submitted. In addition, that was also submitted to your peer consultants, who also, the other issue on that evening was that the peer consultant was going to review all of our engineering data. They were also going to comment on the geotech. We communicated with them. We provided this to them, and you have received on the 17th of February PEP's report prepared for the city. And I believe, unless you have any specific questions, hopefully everyone's read it, but I believe that the report concurs with the statements that were made at the first hearing last month.
Based on the peer review and your engineer, we're talking about a presumptive set of soil conditions. Will that be part of a construction set that gets submitted to the building official for their review and approval?
Absolutely, positively. We want you to put a condition in our approval that requires that. And we're also comfortable with TEP reviewing it once we do the actual geotech. So we would do the geotech, we would have that, we would attach that to building construction drawings, we would invite this board or planning director to reach back out to TEP if they feel as though they need further confirmation. And that would be our recommendation for analyzing it.
One of the genesis for the peer review is from the building official saying, if I don't have a set that I feel I can, I don't understand how to do that. He wanted support to do that. So that's what I can't.
And then the other thing in this obviously is they provide you information regarding what we discussed about the hinge point in the tower and the design. So I would suggest that those two things answered any open questions on the third topic from the last presentation, which was the fall zone.
Now, just to interrupt, but that deals, I would assume that's a detail that would be pertinent to the variance request.
I believe it's more pertinent to the variance request. I believe it is less pertinent to the special permit.
That's what I'm asking. That.
Yes. Yep. And that's why I took the time now to explain that those are here. The fourth thing we discussed was visual impact. And we had David Archambault present, and we provided slides, we provided pictures, we talked about proximity to other properties, we talked about view shed, and we have David here if there are any follow-up questions. I don't know that there are any, but if there are, or when it's open to the public, if the public has any comments, David is here with us tonight, and we can put the photo sims and all of that back on the board. And that would be the fourth point from our prior presentation. And I believe that that in fact is also relevant to the variance because you have to balance, the public good with the benefits and the rights in a variance under 4817. The fifth part of our presentation last time, and we really only touched on it briefly, and unfortunately they can't be here tonight, was Mark Renti, who prepared a valuation report, which this board has had since before the last meeting. And if you recall, at that last meeting, we did open Mr. Carenti's report. One of the reasons and one of the things we pointed out in that report was that there is a 200-foot tower that also is adjacent to residential property and also doesn't comply with the fall zone requirements. So we did a comparison of that. Exactly, at the country club. So I'm happy to go through Mr. Carenti's report because again, unfortunately, he couldn't be here. On the other hand, this board has had it for now more than a month. I don't know if the members of the board read it and would have any questions, but he did a detailed analysis of alternative properties to assess their impact. He found properties that had cell towers. And so he did a comparative analysis to both pre and post cell tower construction to give you an analysis of the impacts on those properties.
Was that your tower? That's Country Club Road?
No. None of the towers in this report are our tower.
Now, in that discussion, was the foundation for that tower kind of similar to what you're proposing for your, because I drive by every day.
So let me take a look because I do think one of them was not a monopole. One of them was a lattice, but I do believe that this is a similar monopole. Yes, this is a monopole application. So this is, I can't tell you what the soil conditions are, so I can't tell you what's below the ground, but this is the design of the tower, monopole design. The tower we're proposing, this one is 200 feet tall. Ours is 166. And then there's the antennas. So if you have an 8-foot antenna mounted at the top of 166, we call it 170 feet because that top antenna is 4 feet above and 4 feet below. And that is what it would look like. All right. Does anyone want me to go through each property in this report, or are you comfortable that you have the report?
Well, I guess the property that up near the fairgrounds, that was one that was.
So that's alternate site analysis. That's not, okay. And I'm going to get, I'm going to get to that next. Okay. The last thing that I felt, so geotech we covered, that was going to be one of the things we were going to discuss. The foundation and the hinge was one of the things we were going to discuss, which is the TEP report. So one of the questions that came up at the last hearing were some discussions about some greater detail and getting some insight from AT&T as to the locations and how they determined the coverage needs and how they assessed the various locations. And that is why we asked Attorney Pare to come tonight on behalf of AT&T, and he can run you through some slides. When you're ready, you can tell Mike which ones you put on the screen. And AT&T submitted a report today. We only got, and in fairness to everybody, we spoke with Ed for the first time last Thursday or Friday. So he's catching up with us a little bit, but I don't want anyone to think we only submitted it today because we only wanted to submit it today. We talked to Ed last Friday. He can go through, that's all in the packages that were submitted to you. But in fairness to the audience, we can put it up on the screen. Ed can walk you through that, and he can give you some of the additional information on that. Okay.
So good evening. My name is Ed Parry. I'm an attorney at Brown Rudnick. I'm outside counsel at AT&T. I've been doing this for about 28 years. I've been representing AT&T for probably in excess of 20 years. So I do apologize for the tardy delivery of my letter, and I hope everybody received it. I see my letterhead around the table, so I'm going to assume everybody did. Michael, if you could put up my coverage plots, the PDF I sent. I did bring some copies of the maps.
Can I ask you, can I get one set? I want to hand it behind us to the extent anybody here.
So for those who didn't print one, there's they're basically 11 maps. So let me start off with a little bit about AT&T. So AT&T is a licensed carrier. They're licensed by the FCC to provide wireless telecommunication services. They're licensed nationally. They run a national and support a national network, includes the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, obviously, and the city of Greenfield. AT&T was also awarded a bid under an RFP for something called FirstNet. And I will say that I did watch the full public hearing from the last proceeding, just to get a sense of kind of what the questions were, where there was confusion, what the confusion was. And I think probably the board just doesn't have a good sense of what our gap looks like, the size of the gap, what AT&T is trying to cover, and likewise, to explain a little bit about AT&T's FirstNet. So I'll start with that. So AT&T was awarded a contract to operate the FirstNet network. This was done post 9/11, pursuant to the 9/11 Commission. There are many first responder public safety networks out there. They don't operate in sync or together. And some of the lessons we learned from these large scale public safety issues is that coverage just gets eaten up. So everybody's trying to make the same call, do the same thing on their phone at the same time. First responders are also subject to that science, and they can't get their calls through. So the idea was the federal government would establish FirstNet. As I said, AT&T won the bid to develop and operate the network. And what it does is it allows the first responders to basically have a priority network. It's a preemptive network. So just to give you a kind of a layman's sense of what FirstNet does, is if the cell site in a particular area was overwhelmed and was shutting down because there weren't enough capacity, there wasn't enough coverage in the area, someone with a first responder phone, somebody on FirstNet, would be able to connect to the network, and those typical commercial callers, personal callers, would get dropped. So it's a way to get the necessary communications in place during times of high volume, high stress on the wireless network.
I don't mean to interrupt. Is it done on signal strength?
What's that?
When that decision making is taking place, is that on signal strength?
Well, if a first responder on FirstNet cannot attach to the network, people will get bounced off the network so they can.
Yeah,
so
that's.
I guess it's a backward way of saying yes, but it's not really signal strength. It would be where overused and will free up spectrum so that you can attach. So a first responder can attach.
Thank you.
City of Greenfield is a FirstNet customer, as is the City of Greenfield's fire department. So we have two customers. This is obviously an important, piece of public safety in Greenfield also. So Some of the maps I want to discuss tonight, I have Martin Lavin is on the Zoom portion. He was with you last time. I don't think there was a real sense of what AT&T is trying to do, existing coverage, proposed coverage. And then I prepared or had Martin prepare some slides for some of those alternative sites that you mentioned, such as the fairground. So this is AT&T's existing coverage. This is basically the plot that was in Martin's radio frequency report. It was submitted with the application. You see a blue star. I mean, that's typical of one of these maps. This map was produced by C-Squared based on AT&T's network information. That's shared with C-Squared. We have information about existing AT&T sites, how they cover the area, how they don't cover the area. So basically, you're seeing a representation of AT&T's coverage in the 700 megahertz spectrum. So the blue star in the middle is where the proposed site's to be located. You'll see it's right smack in an area of white. White is not what we want to have for coverage. That's below AT&T's threshold. Now, you might be able to get a call through there, but it's not up to standards for AT&T's network. That would be clearly a gap in coverage. The black stars, you'll see them, they'll kind of over on the right-hand side in the middle. Each of the existing sites have a number. They begin with MA. You can see the black dots. And anywhere you see green, if you look in the center of it, you'll see a black dot. So that's kind of representative of what the carrier attempts to do. So let's take the site up in the top right-hand corner. That's the site that's operating. You can see green closer to the site itself. It's green. It then starts to fade away as you separate from the site itself. So it'll fade from green, then you get that orange. So orange is it's a signal that's degraded. You could still get a call through. You may be able to have data, but the idea would be in busy areas, we want to be all green. And that's why when we construct a site, it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle or a honeycomb, as I mentioned in my cover letter today. They create these little pockets of cells, coverage of cells, and then we try to interconnect those, providing some overlap so that as you drive through one cell, as you kind of hit a white area, the next cell picks it up. So you have, continuous coverage. There was also a question I thought was kind of interesting at the last hearing. There was a question about why the road is red. And I do know that when you print these things, because I did it on my printer, I had trouble telling that was red. I-91 was red versus the orange and whether it was the same. Just to be clear, the interstate is red, whether there's coverage there or not. That's just how we identify the interstate. It is a different shade than that orange. It may not always come through in that fashion. But the idea would be if we wanted to have complete coverage, good solid AT&T coverage, and wherever this map is representing, it would all be green. Now, Interstate 91, as I mentioned in my letter today, so we can get some Mass DOT reports on traffic. Now, in the area, let's see, north of 116, back in 2021, the traffic count was 29,000. That is a huge amount of traffic. And I cannot imagine, in looking at some of the opposition materials that were filed, that there's even an honest argument that this is not a significant gap. I also looked at the traffic counts for Highway 2 and 2A. Between the Home Depot and the Big Y, DOT estimates 15,000 cars a day. On Route 2A, east of Elm Street, 12,000 cars. So we're talking about significant traffic volumes that AT&T will be able to cover. If you take a look at Martin's initial report that was filed, on page 5, 1.6 miles of Interstate 91 is not covered by AT&T at a sufficient level. 1 mile on Route 2 and 0.6 of a mile on Route 2A. These are very busy areas needing coverage. And as I think Martin tried to explain, and if you take a look at his report, the other sites that are surrounding this get stressed. So, as the signal comes out from these other sites, if they're straining to get too far, your phone doesn't attach properly. And you've probably had situations where if you use your phone, you're having difficulty maintaining a connection, it warms up. It happens to me also. If I'm not in an area where my phone really has to work harder, then the phone starts heating up because it's trying to latch onto something, producing more power to connect to a site that's too far away. But because there's enough signal there, it does try to connect. So as I said, if we can imagine, we'd love this to all be green, everybody would have great AT&T coverage. That's not likely to happen.
So this is existing coverage.
This is existing coverage, and I do want to, this is in the past, this was with the application that was filed, but I saw from the hearing, I just don't think that message got across, or maybe, I saw there were a lot of issues going on. So I wanted to walk through this. This is existing AT&T coverage. And if we can focus on that blue star, because that's what we're looking to do. And Michael, if you can switch to the next one.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely.
The design of your antenna system is really trying to gear up to pick those high traffic areas or the critical areas to serve. Because some of the white area there, I mean, it's good to get everywhere, but 91, U2, 2A are your target improvements.
2A, the area the neighborhood surrounding it, the roadways, the side roadways, the businesses in the area. I mean, we're in a busy area. We'll have, businesses nearby that will benefit. We'll be providing in-building coverage so folks can work from home, businesses can operate, on the wireless network. So that's why I mentioned it would be great if it's all green. That's not going to happen. There are going to be areas that are going to remain white. They're probably just from the cost and the limitation on budget and investment. Some areas just not going to get covered at the end of the day. But I'll tell you what needs to get covered is Route 91 and Route 2 and Route 2A.
And the reason I'm asking this question, I mean, that location is picked to provide best service you can from that location to these critical areas.
Right now, AT&T, we're interested in coverage. Now, we have a partner here with Verity, who is, going to provide the infrastructure for us to attach to. So we're interested in the coverage. They're interested in the infrastructure. Our interests are aligned, but we're the ones driving this. We're saying, this is the height we need. This is where we need to be. We need to be within this search area. And that's why we gave you all of those alternative, potential alternative locations to look at.
But that drives the decision with monopole.
Correct.
I'm trying to put those two aspects together so I understand.
That's right.
Why that location.
Coverage is the key. So we don't come in saying, we want to build towers. We come in and say, we want to provide coverage. We need the infrastructure to do it. Now, if you had like in Boston, if you had a 150-story building, where the tractor company is, we'd go on the roof of it. So it's not so much we need the tower. You just don't have, as many communities, you don't have the infrastructure to support, providing wireless coverage. Did I answer your question or should I? Okay. Mike, can we go to the next slide? So one of the things that was a little confusing to me also, as I heard some of the questions last time, is, what exactly the coverage is going to be. So I asked Martin to prepare a plot showing just the coverage that we'll get at this 166-foot, we call it antenna center line. It's 170 feet to the top of the antenna. But this is the coverage that we'll actually get from the site as proposed. We've shut off, as you'll see, we shut off all the other sites, all the black dots, all the black stars no longer have green around them. So this is just the site that AT&T proposed. It's site MA 5014 up in the top left, proposed at 166 feet above ground level. It's the antenna center line. So, I think you get the sense that you can see where the green coverage is. It's going to be close to where the tower is located. Then we get a lot of spillover in the orange. We get up north, and we get down south, cover that gap. If you look at the previous one, that's why I printed them so you can go back and forth and look at what we're covering. Now, I'm going to run through these next set. I'll do this rather quickly. Mike, if we could flip. So what I did was I went through each of the alternative sites that you discussed with Michael and Martin last time. And I asked Martin to prepare a similar plot. We call these plot maps for a 160-foot above ground level tower if it were located at the alternative location. And what we did was we identified those alternative locations with the yellow star. So this is I think it's called the Longview Tower. It's up in the top left-hand quadrant there, or it's northwest of our proposed Blue Star. And you'll see it just doesn't provide the coverage all the way down as our location does. Michael, can you flip again? This one was kind of interesting. This is the WHAI tower. I had Martin run it at 166, but we can't attach to it. He testified last time that it's an AM tower using 4G and 5G. AM towers are no longer permissible for us to use from an interference standpoint. The 4G and 5G are just too sensitive. And Martin talked about that last time. You also see it just doesn't provide the coverage to the south of the Blue Star. Next, Michael. This is the fairground. So you see the yellow star, it's due east of the Blue Star. Now, what was interesting about the fairground was I took a look at, the location. It's going to be awful hard to screen that thing at 170 feet. And then I realized that it's not in the right zoning district. So even if we were looking to go in there, you'd be forcing us back to something in the GC district, not something in the RA district. But out of fairness, I produced a plot anyway. Next slide, Michael. This was, there were a couple of church buildings or parcels that, we had listed. Again, this is the Latter-day Saints property. You'll see, again, yellow star to the northwest of the blue. And it frankly doesn't even get down to where the red, white, and blue 91 is. Next slide, Michael.
Before you go that location, I'm looking at it, would that have file zone that would deal with the 170 feet?
That's a pretty sizable lot, so very well could. But it's not something we'd be interested in.
No, I'm just
whether we need it, right? And whether we needed relief or not, it's not a site we would build because it doesn't provide the coverage. Next slide, Michael.
This is the next slide.
Oh, sorry. This is the Jehovah's Witness property location. Again, it's in a similar vicinity. You'll see the yellow star to the northwest of the Blue Star where our proposed. And again, we don't get the coverage down 91. Next slide. This is a Western Mass Electric property. This is again to the northwest, which most of these appear to be. Again, yellow star. This one's even worse because it doesn't even make it close to where the 91 symbol is. Next slide, Michael.
Question on all the ones you talked about, they're with a monopole that's 170 feet high.
170 feet, right?
Distance stays the same at all locations.
Correct.
And the height stays the same.
Exactly. So we didn't want to go, we wanted to give the board a sense of apples to apples. The sense I got from the board's questions last time was he didn't have a good feel for that. So
would that change if you made it 200 feet high?
It would change some. I'll have Martin, it would change some, but I'm quite confident. I think Martin will testify. It's not going to cover 91 moving on. I'll also warn you that if you get to 200 feet, you may have to light the tower. So you're going to deal with, we always play this kind of hypothetical game. And so when you move, it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. If you move one, it's going to affect the rest of the puzzle. So if you say, all right, we're going to put one here, but we don't like it there, so we want to move it there. And it's like, well, now you're too close to this one and it causes interference, or you've opened up another area, which becomes problematic for us. We also have constructability issues such as, if we put up a 400-foot tower, would it work? No, because it would be too high. And I think you heard Martin explain that.
Is that decision made out of intuition or is it done with
science, pure science? So as I said, this is all based on the AT&T network, actual results, not based on a drive test. But what we usually find is that a drive test will confirm what C-squared has done. C-squared, in my opinion, is the gold standard for these radio frequency plot maps. We work with C-squared across New England. They're accepted as experts at all of the agencies, the state agencies, the Cape Cod Commission. the Connecticut Siting Council. They are truly the gold standard. So what you're seeing is based on science and C Squared's experience.
And let me just bear with me. If you ran iterations picking a site and you change the height and you're running the coverage, you're also running the constructability cost with it. So that, at the end of the day, you're not going to do that to every site, but is there at some point, because,
I'll give you, for instance, the fairgrounds, we wouldn't consider because we're not in the right zoning district. So we couldn't get your bylaw, your ordinance says whatever, use an existing facility, use an existing structure, use an industrial lot, use a general commercial. You don't get there, you don't pass go.
correct me if I'm wrong. Eric, does residential get excluded, or is that just the last site of choice, or is that just not usable?
Not usable.
Okay, so residential areas are not usable. Zoning district.
Next slide, Mike, what you look? We also looked at Hampton Inn. I think there were two, I think we called one a sign and another raw land. But again, this will be, more north of the Blue Star that we have. Again, 160 foot, it's 170 foot tower. It doesn't get down to even where the 91 is. Next slide, Michael. I don't know if we have any.
I have a quick question. The goal is to cover Route 91 as much as possible and as much up, 2 and 2A as possible. Visually, when I'm looking at some of these green areas, they seem very close as far as the proposed site is to like the amount of 91 you're covering there. I mean, because based on the drawing there's green coverage down around that lower 91 marker, and even going further down than even the proposed one. Do you actually have any percentage? Like if we go here, we're covering 80% of what we wanted to cover. This one's covering 83% of what
Yes,
we're
I'll do
covering.
one better because one of the charts I gave you deals with population and area, so we can run through that.
Well, I'm not so worried about, the goal is the 91 and that
Well, no.
the cars going down there. I'm
Well, yeah,
trying
but don't- Right, but let's not,
covered.
let's not adjust my goal, AT&T's goal though. 91, 2A, and everything around it. So anything we can get coverage, whether it's a house on a side lot, that's another customer for us, more coverage. So we're not limiting 91 to 2A, otherwise we'd be in here saying, those are the only things we're trying to cover. We want to cut, we'd love everything to be green. That's just not going to be realistic. Next slide, Michael. This was a possibility at the community college that doesn't even come close. You'll see again, the community college is noted as the yellow star, northwest. Matter of fact, that's probably an area that needs something else, down the road or in the future. Heavily populated area, probably something that, at some point based on investment and budgets, there might be development in the future. Again, very very based on, where the population center is going to be and obviously the interstate highway. Next slide, Mike. Then there was a question about a town parcel. Now, this is going to have a whole host of issues as to whether we can even do this. It would have to be an RFP issue. The town would have to show interest, but, it was a parcel that was identified. So we put the tower up. And again, it doesn't provide the coverage that we get from the site at the Blue Star. Now, I also submitted, hey, Michael, can you punch up I should have sent you a PDF with the chart.
Yep.
I do have some copies of this also if you don't. Oh,
Is this the correct one?
yes.
Like, can you make it a little bit bigger?
Yeah, this is one problem with
I have that.
That's good. Thank you.
So what's,
Next year.
I'm sorry. Are we good? I also have copies of my letter. So I'm gonna leave those on the table. You don't really need them now, but if you did get a chance to review it, if not, copies are there. So I'm gonna put my glasses back on so I can actually. So what C Squared is also able to do is based on these plot maps that we just showed you and the coverage that gets provided from MA 5014, the Blue Star. C-Squared is able to extrapolate that and deal with, you know, how many people are being covered? Like, what is this covering? So what Martin did was he did if you look at the blue shaded area, it has coverage at 166 feet. So that's as proposed. So those are the new amounts of coverage where we're going to cover population being people. So about 2,147 people. So by Martin taking and producing that plot map, he can figure out using census data what we're capturing as far as population in that blurb. Now these are going to be new customers that don't have good AT&T coverage at this point. If you recall, if you went through Martin's initial report, you know, he made a chart about the network traffic that's on all of those other sites that we have, the black stars around. And as I said, we're really, you know, the closer you are to a facility, the better your coverage is, the better your phone works, the better customer experience there is. In the situation where those sites become overloaded, the people near those sites also suffer. But Martin can, you know, estimate what the new population count would be. And so because there was a big concern about height and the fall zone and the height of the tower and the visibility, I asked them to do it at 20-foot increments so you could see what happens if you sit here in, you know, the zoning board of appeals and make a decision that, well, you know, we don't think it needs to be 166 feet. I'm just going to arbitrarily suggest 126 might.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is there, by changing the distances, does it impact the coverage that you talked about for first responders in the police department? Does that degrade as a result of that?
Without question, the more coverage we have, the better off it is for all users, FirstNet users, AT&T.
I just want to have you make that clear that
Yeah.
this impacts customers, but it impacts first responders and that.
First responders, your fire department, and whatever city agencies are using FirstNet. And I got to tell you, you know, if police and fire are, in this instance, like you have fire and city officials, if they're using FirstNet, they probably have AT&T as their personal phone or their side phone. And so this will provide coverage, whether it's a personal phone or, you know, a city supplied provided phone for them, so that, you know, if they have to be in an area where there is no coverage with this site, they'll now have coverage. So they're also users.
Let me just ask, the stuff that's being covered by these charts and stuff.
Yep.
This is probably primarily for the special permit, not so much the variance.
Well, here, so
I just want to,
so we had this discussion. So my field now, I've been doing this a long time. I've done a lot of variances. I've done a lot of special permits. To me, the coverage goes to both. So when you're tinkering with the variance, because the variance is based on a height calculation, so you can call it a fall zone, but really you're going to, you know, if we didn't need the variance, we could have some height of a tower. I mean, we could probably have a 35-foot tower here. That's completely useless, but, you know, the lot would support a tower without a variance. So my feeling is these height requirements, AT&T's height analysis is for both. It's both for the use as a special use permit and a variance because we need the height at 170.
My question, did the first responders, in terms of making this decision, obviously trying to improve service, but was it driven by upgrading first responder coverage or just overall dealing with the area?
It's both. So are we doing this site as a first responder site? No. I mean, there have been some where there problems with it.
Where were you getting service complaints or service issues from them regarding upgrading the service?
From the FirstNet folks?
Yeah.
I don't know. I assume so because 91 is not well covered. So yeah, I know that the city has been in touch with the FirstNet folks at AT&T and they want improved coverage. I've done sites where they wouldn't be built except for the FirstNet, you know, network. This is not one of those. It's not a dedicated FirstNet site. So to be fair to your question, yes, you know, those have happened, especially out here in Western Mass, but they're pretty infrequent.
Thank you.
Somebody, is it,
Yeah, I got.
what's safe tech? Somebody's asking
Hang on,
questions.
I was gonna ask, Mr. Chair, someone keeps popping comments on the screen while the presentation's going forward. I would only ask one thing, and that is that the person identify themselves.
Oh, there's no questions being asked by anybody.
Somebody's asking, somebody's popping up.
Somebody's chatting, so apparently.
Somebody is
Chats.
chatting and they don't have their name on it. They say Safe Tech Forward. And I do believe that the people should be identifying themselves as part of
Well,
the
and
public.
they should be asking questions through the board, not through a chat. So I don't know if you could shut off the chat, but
Yeah.
I do see questions popping up and
I
grabbing my eyes.
realize that. So no, this is your presentation.
Exactly. We'll answer all the questions. I don't,
Yeah, but that's for another portion of this
Yep.
meeting.
so I'm not gonna go through all of these charts, but you'll see that, the coverage at 166 feet produces, the best population coverage, best business population coverage, and the best area covered, obviously. As you start to reduce the height, and as I explained in my letter, we did 20-foot increments. Now, this is kind of a standard, a 10-foot increment, we're not going to see a lot of change. So it's not going to be easy to identify. We can't be assured, or it's not as reliable what the changes will look like, but somewhere in between is going to be that result. So if, for whatever reason, this tower were reduced to a height of 146 feet, we're going to lose about 13%. We're going to lose about 13% of the population coverage that we have, 16% of the business population coverage that we would get. And then if you reduce it further to 126, we'll lose, a full 25, 28% of what we're looking to cover.
Can I ask a question while you're doing this? Sure. By the folks that might have been here, aren't here, would they add anything to this, or is that just a separate detail?
I think separate detail, I
So
think.
that's- So right now, this is not impacting anyone else who should have been here, could have been here.
Well, actually, it's Martin Lavin who is here. He's up on Zoom. So he was here at the first hearing. All of this is in his report. I mean, between what we find, I'm not giving you much new, except I am giving you new data and new.
And it was pointed out, I think, earlier that if someone had known, there would have been someone else here.
He said, Martin, are you here?
Martin, are you muted?
Martin, are you?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, any specific, I'm giving you a summary and
I'm just saying, if we were to,
I will let you know if there's a topic or a question you ask that we have somebody missing. I would say, Mr. Chair, we have so-and-so who's not here this evening,
you'd have them
and I would want them.
at the next.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Just want to be clear that there's nothing that's being impacted.
No, not at all.
no.
No.
I also, one of the things I took a look at, I went into Martin's radio frequency report, and for anybody who wants to know, this is what it looks like in your packet that was originally filed, RF report. And, these plots are in there. Now, you certainly have more plots tonight than Martin provided initially. But I will say, I did take a look at, this sheet is always informative, and this is just the sheet, which is labeled MA 5014, neighborhood sites and radial distances. So this is the AT&T network that we were showing you with those black dots, stars. You'll see them all over the place. And then we have distances. And what's kind of interesting is AT&T's closest facility is 1.5 miles away. I mean, I'm amazed that we don't have something closer. And the one after that is 3.3 miles away. So the need is obvious. You just don't have coverage here. And, I've done sites in Western Mass like this, with this decent coverage. And, some towns have no locations in town. So while there's decent coverage in certain parts of town, this is wholly lacking by, having the closest facility at 1.5 miles away. The last thing I'll talk about, I think, let me just put this in my note. The last thing I'll talk about is the emissions. So, I know I have a following from time to time with some of the people on Zoom, and I do want to just chat about AT&T's emissions. I have with us tonight Don Hayes, who we introduced. He is a radiation specialist, expert, but C-Squared did provide a radio frequency emissions report. Obviously tower, being up at 166 feet, it's going to be very low emissions when it gets down to the ground. So I think in this instance, it's less than 5% of the FCC maximum. The FCC maximum already has conservative estimates, et cetera, et cetera. As a federal licensee and under the Telecommunications Act, we only need to satisfy that standard. No other standard matters. People can talk about it till they're blue in the face. And we encourage people, everybody has a right, everybody has free speech, they can say whatever they want. The bottom line is, if we comply and game is over, and in this instance, as I noted, C-Squared provided a report that shows that the emissions will be less than 5% of the FCC maximum. We can all agree whether we like the FCC. We can all agree whether we should follow the FCC, but the federal law is we have to follow the FCC. That's it. This board has no jurisdiction, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, no jurisdiction, so long as we comply.
But the radiation talk about is the impact of health.
It's the emissions. So the FCC.
I want to be clear. I understand what you're saying.
Correct. So we have to show you as a board that we comply with the FCC standards, which we did. Other people are going to raise health issues, but that's not something you can consider in your report. But people can say what they want. It's just that you can't consider that in your evaluation of our application. And I only suggest if that is going to be the topic du jour, that you pause on that and get your town council or your.
No, I'm just trying to understand what that means. I'm not here to.
Well, emissions means a lot of things. Some people say it's health. It's the FCC just says the environmental impact of emissions are under the FCC's exclusive jurisdiction. I don't like using the word health, but yes.
Yeah.
Yes, people with health concerns over the emissions, we only have to show that we comply.
Yeah, and because that's the issue that'll be commented about.
I get a feeling that might be a topic. I think at this point, I've done enough babbling. I have, as I said, Martin is with me. If there are specific questions about the coverage, I did note in my letter that, if you basically have two sites, they're in close proximity and they're basically at the same elevation and they're not going to, get a lot of interference from trees, buildings, terrain, et cetera. They're probably going to work for the most part because you're getting above the trees and, so there is a site at the I think I mentioned the tractor supply company across, I think it's across the street from where we are. So I took a look at that. I don't think it's going to meet the fall zone requirement. It is in the GC district. And the thing is, pretty much fully developed with the river to the rear. So you're facing the same thing from AT&T's perspective. We get a lot like this next to the highway that's pretty heavily treed. And then you look at some of the limitations on, where the development could take place. I mean, this site is top notch. I mean, people may not like to hear that, but that's what it is. I mean, it's well screened. It's next to a highway. It'll provide the coverage that AT&T needs, which is a benefit to the community, benefit to public safety, benefit to first responders. And it really has minimal impact. These are not invisible. So it's going to be, whatever the height's going to be, it's going to be a piece of steel rising up to that height. We have to be beyond above the tree line. So by definition, somebody's going to be able to see it from somewhere. We try to minimize it. We try to balance that. The ordinance tries to balance that, but you get a site that's a good site, you should maximize it. And your ordinance actually requires that, co-location is mandated, that it should be the minimum necessary. You don't want multiple poles. You can't have a situation where you have, all right, AT&T, you can come in, but we want all short poles, but you can only have one. Well, that's not functional. So, the city has made a decision. We want fewer taller towers on whatever this reference to a smart zoning thing. I just read your ordinance and say, all right, here's the path the city wants me to follow. We follow it. With the help of Verity, they located the site. They're our partner here. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
No.
Now, I am sitting here trying to think of what questions David Singer. So.
So let me also say, if we're coming back, we'll come in. You can digest this. I'll be back. I'll bring Martin back. We'll
The nice thing is David will have a chance to listen to this, so.
True, Mr.
I listened to him when we were prepping for me to fill in, to try to get all the things that he was asking me.
Fair point.
Anything I missed there. That's all fine.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Oh, please.
Can you help me understand, like, when I look at these maps, like, I know that at our prior meeting, you kind of talked a little about how the Hampton Inn site didn't really work, and I can't recall if it was about height or whatnot, but that coverage looks comparable, if not better to me, when I look at these maps, and it just kind of feels like, well, that's close to the highway. It's not residential at all. It's not the most attractive area regardless. Why is the Hampton Inn site not a contender when you look at this coverage compared to the proposed site?
Yes, I think that's a better question for Martin. And Martin,
I don't know, were you able to hear me well enough with that question?
Yes, of the,
coverage from Hampton,
the original time we went around, we were going to build on the roof of what was in the, site scrub was the roof of the inn.
Yeah.
And the sign outside. That's why things look better this time. These plots are based on the assumption of being able to build a 170-foot tower.
yeah, Martin, I think the question is, he's looking at the new comparison at 166 at the Hampton Inn compared to what we're proposing. So where are the coverage limitations from the Hampton Inn as compared to our proposal?
I'm just going to pull up my.
Geographically, they're not that far apart.
They're not. But when you look at the spread of green, I don't see the compelling reason why the proposed site, like, when I look at this map, Hampton looks more compelling to me than the proposed site. So I'm just trying to get a sense of, if coverage is the driving concern, and this was a viable site contender, why is that not the site that you're applying for?
Well, number one, we choose the site. That's
Right. So my question is, why this site and not the Hampton Inn site when we look at these coverage maps? Like, I get that there might be other reasons or circumstances. The question is, what are they?
Michael, can you bring up the other PDF?
Which one, the maps?
Yeah, the maps, and go to the Hampton Inn. And Martin, the question is the coverage comparison between the Hampton Inn and our proposed site. That the Hampton Inn site looks better to this board member.
In my layperson status, it does, yeah.
Martin?
Yes. But based on the assumption that we could actually build a 170-foot tower there, the coverage does look comparable. I mean, the original scrub, of course, we were just looking at putting it on the sign or the roof of the hotel, which didn't do very much for us. It's a matter of, I think, not so much from RF, but any other considerations such as fall zone and so forth. We haven't dug into this site at all. When it was proposed to AT&T, it was to build on the sign or on the roof of the inn, which wouldn't work at all for us.
And what about coverage to the south? Does the Hampton Inn get us as far as, I mean, are there any limitations between the Hampton Inn and our proposal?
The Hampton Inn does not reach 91 south of the Shield there, as well as our proposed site does.
Any other neighborhoods, Martin?
The neighborhoods, we have a lot more green and orange through there. It's just a matter of getting down 91, I think, is the main reason, if this does turn out to be feasible at all. But there are limitations going south. It doesn't reach as far south on 91. It's not as well aligned as our site is.
Hey, Mike, can I ask you a question? Can you go to the Shield, the 91 Shield? And can you zoom in on the Hampton site? So scroll it up a little, keep better. Yeah, and zoom in and scroll up. Keep going. Go one more if you can. Go zoom one more time. and then put the 91 shield in the middle of the screen. And then leave that up there for a minute, if everyone can get a view of that. So it looks like there's a little bit of white just above the 91. So Martin, correct me if I'm wrong. It looks like it's orange on both sides of the shield. And then the coverage really below the shield is kind of gapish.
Yeah, there's about half a mile there. If you look at the,
Yeah, so I was gonna ask, I would like, Mike, if you can then, when this board is done looking at the Hampton Inn at 200% with the shield in the middle, could you then, and I'll ask the chair to let us know when everyone's ready. I would like you to then put the proposed site and do the exact same thing, put the shield in the middle and then put the shield at 200%. Thank you, Mike. Go ahead.
Yep.
So it looks like there's no white around or above the shield. And it does seem like it's pretty solid, at least along 91. It's not getting businesses or homes in, but it certainly does seem like it's following the highway for almost another 3/4 of a mile.
But that was not the driving or sole concern within this, right? A half mile while going 65 miles per hour means a relatively short period of time with no coverage before you're back in the orange or green.
Unless you're broken down there.
Unless you break down there, right?
But it's not no
but
coverage.
let-
I can get a signal with an
No,
iPhone
please,
7.
please.
I
Presentation.
think if you also take a look, if you look at the Blue Star, you'll see that there's coverage to the east that you don't get from Hampton Inn. Because again, you're gonna have a situation where you're looking at one map. And if you flip back and forth, you'll see, there's more coverage over by Munson there where the town property line is. There's more green there. There's more over if you go to the east of what's that, Wisdom Way? You'll see additional coverage. So it's not a matter of we have this little gap on 91. It's everything in the footprint and then comparing. There would be no reason for us to duplicate coverage up at Hampton Inn if that's what we're going to do, or the target is down here, 91, 2, and all those surrounding areas.
To add to Mark's question, when I talked about earlier doing a comparative analysis between this site and Hampton Inn, and I look at the fact that there's some white here, but again, the orange isn't that you don't have coverage, you just don't have as good coverage as that.
That's correct. In orange, you have coverage. It's not as good coverage. It's green, obviously, white is problematic. You still might get, as I said at the outset, you may still get a call through. It's not reliable coverage.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say is just looking at the Hampton Inn site. If you take the total coverage, whether it's green or orange, to me, it appears that it's taking up more of the map than the proposed site. In fact, there's more green on the Hampton site than there is on the proposed site. If you added up all of the coverage, both orange and green, and you just even as a percentage, there's more green showing on the Hampton site than there is on the proposed site.
And that might be all well and good for those areas, but it's not what we're targeting. So you're going to leave something on 91. We're not interested in gaps on 91 in those areas. So it might look like a bigger green. We could do, a site where there's no terrain issues and you'll have a big blob of green. You'll say, this is even better. But it's our network that we're designing and how the pieces fit together.
It also could be, the green could be a large area of vacant land. And where
Which I understand.
right, you're trying to get population, businesses and traffic.
Right, but we're not here to hear just about what you're looking to do, but what's best for our community.
Yes.
So the fact that this is better for you doesn't mean it's best for our community.
Better
So
for
I'm
your-
trying to weigh that.
But best for your community is kind of a work of art there. We're talking about, are we meeting the standards of the ordinance? And in light of the Telecommunications Act of 1996, do we meet those standards? Not what people's feelings are or how AT&T should be investing their money and their limited resources to provide coverage. Yeah, I'm sure that everybody would say, put it out where nobody can see it, but nobody benefits from it. Why would we do that?
Yeah,
So
but
this is the area we're targeting. We comply with the zoning ordinance, at least from AT&T's perspective. In light of the Telecommunications Act, we comply with that analysis. And that's what we're trying to demonstrate, that we have a need, we have a coverage gap. This is the feasible way to fix that in accordance with the case law in the Telecommunications Act of 1996.
And if this was simply a matter of meeting ordinances, you wouldn't get a special permit here.
Well, that's what your ordinance requires. So your ordinance is saying, come get a special permit. And then
Getting warm in here, please.
Yeah, now that everyone left.
I'm gonna let Michael deal with the ordinance stuff.
Let me just say something. One of the things you I asked earlier, about how this is done, you said scientifically.
Yep.
That takes away the artism to the process. I mean, if you set up your array with your antennas, and again, there's that small area, is it possible because this is all done with computer analysis and designing the array to kind of try to get this coverage.
Yep.
If you alter that at all, does that have that disappear and change this dramatically? I mean, I'm trying to understand because, the antennas to cover 91, and there is that slight blip in there, and if you happen to break down, and I get that. But is there any possibility scientifically to kind of do an iteration of this that changes that coverage to include?
Well, I don't want to keep going back to this intent thing, but members of the board keep saying it's the intent to cover 91. That's one of the intentions is to cover 91. That's important because it's an interstate highway and we get 29,000 cars on it, but
You made an important statement about that white piece not being covered. So what I'm hearing is that is important.
as is the other areas and the other neighborhoods. So,
But back to Debbie's question, if that isn't as critical as you say, why isn't this an appropriate solution to the problem?
Attorney Rosen, can I? make
Yeah.
a statement?
Yeah.
So
Lou Hodges, our engineer.
Louis Hodget's engineer. One point that I think is being lost in this conversation, the coverage map that we're showing assumed a 170-foot tower at the Hampton Inn. Just for a comparison standpoint, the ability to put a 170-foot tower at the Hampton Inn site is kind of questionable. That lot is not big enough. It would have the same variance request for a fall zone. There's also the question, is the visibility of the tower greater at that location, which we haven't assessed, but just to the point, the original assumption at that Hampton Inn location and why it was excluded was because we were proposing to go on the rooftop and not put a 170-foot tower there. At that point, the coverage map is considerably less coverage. Yes, if we put a 170-foot tower there, the coverage is probably fairly similar, but is a 170-foot tower capable of being placed there is really a question that I don't believe we've evaluated.
But can I ask a question? If you're putting it on top of the Hampton Inn, you don't really need a 170-foot tower. You need from the top of assuming you're putting on top of the building or adjacent to the building. Because if you're putting on top of the building, it isn't a heavy 170-foot tower. It's whatever the height of the motel and the structure that becomes part of the extension.
well, that's it.
So I will tell you, and you can share your experiences. I have seen antennas go on the roofs of buildings. I've never seen anybody build a tower on the roof of a building, and in particular, where you're looking at height and the need for a foundation, and potentially if we have a fall zone issue, I think putting a tower on a roof would be distinctly different than you could look at if this were a 12-story hotel. What somebody would do is they would build a faux elevator shaft, and they would make it out of radio frequency transparent material, and they would put the antennas behind that material, and those antennas would be 120, 130, 140 feet. Like, you could come visit me in my office in Boston, and I go to the window and I say, see that right there? That's a cell tower. And people will be like, no, it's not. It's a smokestack, or it's an elevator.
If I can, Louis makes a good point because I want to be.
Can I just, let me just pursue the point.
You're the chairman.
I know I mean, I understand fully what you're saying, but we've got a public here sitting, chafing at the bit to participate.
Sure.
You know, and I didn't see a statement in the report that says, here's why we excluded Hampton Inn, other than it was excluded. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but that hasn't been, you know, publicized or documented so that the public can say, here's why we excluded the Hampton Inn. Because if you were to do that, you'd have to kind of rebuild the Hampton Inn, hold that structure.
So I do believe we did that at the last hearing. I think we went through each site and we eliminated the sites and we explained why. The difference between what we explained at the last meeting and what Mr. Parre, Attorney Parre is doing tonight is to give you an apples to apples comparison. If you took 166 feet at each location, because it seemed like there was an implication at the last meeting that that would be something that you would want to see. So this isn't necessarily saying that it's feasible. It's saying what would the coverage look like at 166 feet at each of the locations that we had analyzed, even though we eliminated some, for instance, because I mean, we did the fairground at 166 feet, but we eliminated that because it's in a residential zone. We eliminated that because there's no screening at all, because there are dozens of neighbors that would literally be right outside that tower.
And I believe we're getting more detail about those specific reasons for each one. You went through all of them.
Correct.
So we disregarded this one,
Right.
we disregarded that one. And part of what we had asked you at that meeting was to come in with more details to why those particular sites were excluded.
Okay.
And you're answering some of those questions now, so I appreciate
Okay.
that.
Yep.
I mean, you know, being a money person, it costs you, I'm making these numbers up. It's $2 million to do the proposed location. And if you do it at Hampton Inn, it's going to cost $4 million. You've got to rebuild the structure. I mean, it becomes extremely costly or, you know, impossible to build for whatever logistic reasons. I just want to make sure that, you know, because the public's going to ask you of us to ask, you know, kind of detail or ask you to.
So as I started off, let me be clear so I represent AT&T, we're about service. So all of I don't know if any of these people would lease these properties to us or to Verity. I don't know if they're constructible. As I went through them and looked at the notes, like I picked up the fairground lot looked feasible. You look at it, it's like, oh, you know, not bad. Now, the coverage isn't as good, but then as I went through the property card, I see it's in a residential district. Well, that just takes it out. But my job tonight was not to come here and say what we can do, what we can't do from a constructability standpoint. These are all just hypothetical towers of 170 feet to show you what AT&T would get out of each of them so that you had a sense of what AT&T would be willing to do and what gaps remain. So other issues that you have, I mean, they may be fair questions, but like I have no idea that the Hampton Inn, you know, Lewis said there's no way you're going to get the fall zone. Well, you know, these sites are equal then, but ours is treed. So from a practical perspective, I get better coverage. That's our goal. I cover our objectives from AT&T. Questions regarding feasibility, I think are better directed to Michael and Verity, but to the extent I can help, I'm happy to help.
And I understand that. I mean, there's two entities here. You're concerned about coverage. They're concerned about the constructability or leasing or whatever it takes to help you provide that coverage. And I'm just trying to distinguish the facts so that when the public gets to participate, they're understanding that there needs to be some more specific.
And I'll also say I have never seen a tower of 100 feet or anything like that mounted to an existing building. So that's just, I don't think that's a reality. But in my world, I would say, well, Hampton Inn, they must have a parking lot. We could put it in a parking lot.
And give up.
And give up coverage and have all zone issues.
And give up 20 or 30 parking spaces.
That's right.
Right. I mean, I'm happy to go back and go through our notes and at the next meeting, provide information. But I do want this board to know, I've come here twice. I've come here several hours before each meeting. I've driven around. I've looked at some of the various sites. I'm familiar with what the residences look like in the neighborhoods that we looked at. I'm familiar with the tree coverage and the screening and the ability to get screening. So we are looking at all of those different things, looking at the AM/FM tower. As you talk about, one factor would be constructability. Another factor would be residence. Another factor would be whether it also needs a fall zone variance like this site would. It's all of those other factors. You could focus on any one site, and I guarantee that there would be a portion of the population that would have a plausible argument for why they don't want it at that particular site. It's kind of a balancing of, and I guess our point is, we did look at 16 different sites. We looked at a lot. We tried to identify the best ones possible that go to both constructability and coverage need. We have a particular client for this site, and they do have a coverage need. And this one slightly is the best site, slightly. The other site is close. From the other factors that are involved, the availability of it, the screening of it, the impact on the neighborhood. It was our opinion, it's Verity's opinion, that this is the best site because it's located in a well-screened property. It's immediately adjacent to the highway. It's in a neighborhood that does have other industrial and commercial uses, and it's down a 15-foot bank.
Just, what I'm trying to do is have us be as informed as we can with information. So when we need to make an objective decision, because we're going to be hearing another side of the audience. And I want to make sure we can balance what we're hearing from the public and what we're hearing from you to make that.
And I am taking copious notes on this so that the next time we get together, I can provide you any additional information that will help you with that.
Thank you.
You got it.
Anything else?
So I think from the variance perspective, well, let me do this. You were asking questions, so I don't want to jump back in if anyone else had any questions.
I'm not saying board members have any questions.
Not at this point.
Okay, so from a variance perspective, I think that we have presented factually the information that we would present. As we mentioned, there were a few people that aren't here tonight, and therefore I won't have them present on the special permit. But from a variance perspective, I do think we presented everything. And I guess I would ask you whether you want to open it up to the public on the variance portion of this application. The one thing that I had discussed with Attorney Singer is that we would have the opportunity to make a closing argument to the extent that you close out the variance portion. I'm asking now, not because I think I'm going to do that later tonight. I presume I'm going to do that at the next meeting. But before I kind of cede the floor now and ask you if you're done with your questions, if you want to open it up to the public, I do want to just confirm that we'll be able to make a closing at the end of the variance and at the end of the special permit process.
I'm struggling to make sure I understand if we're talking about the variance, how do we articulate what information is appropriate to the variance? I mean, it seems like they're very intertwined.
So
for me to try to say, okay, I'm going to conduct a hearing strictly on variance without getting into all of the other, when I say the other issues that kind of blend together. I mean, I know you gave a description those there, but I guess we need to be somewhat narrow to articulate those to be able to discuss the variance details.
But which portion of everything is just about?
Well, that's what I'm trying to.
No. Like the variance is the height of the pole.
Well, they gave five things that they felt were appropriate to the variance, or four.
So essentially, we're looking for variance for, I guess, the height in the fall zone. I'm not sure technically you need a height variance, but I think we asked for height in fall zone because I think the height requirement and the bylaw is that it has to be the minimum height necessary in order to accommodate co-location. But then by the same token, you have the fall zone provision, which limits the height based on the fall zone. So we call it both a height and a fall zone variance. So when I look at, so there's two ways to look at a variance request in a wireless forum. The first is Massachusetts law. So what are the standards for a variance? So it's your 200-64. A literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter would involve a substantial hardship, financial or otherwise, to the petitioner or the applicant. So I think our argument is that there is a hardship. We may not be able to get a cell tower that would provide us the appropriate coverage that we need. In addition, I also think that it would preclude the use of this property. And that's kind of part of the second point. Under Massachusetts law, the hardship has to be owing to circumstances relating to soil conditions, shape, or topography of land or structures, not generally affecting the zoning district, but affecting the general lot. So for those familiar with this lot in the neighborhood, it does go down a slope, so it does have soil conditions, as we talked about at the last meeting. There's significant wetlands out there that really limited where our footprint could be. Otherwise, we would have moved it back further on the lot. That limitation also would limit us to be able to develop the lot in general for any other use. It would limit a footprint of about 800 feet and limit the number of parking spaces you could get down there. So you'd literally be coming down the slope side about 15 feet at a curve to literally a building and a parking lot that would be, you know, nominal in size at best. So this lot is unique. Also, if you go through that neighborhood, almost all the other lots and properties in that neighborhood, in that district, are at the same level. This one happens to go down and then go up along the side of the highway. So it is a unique lot. So I think it meets the second criteria for a variance. And this is the top one. So the third one is desirable relief may be granted without either substantial detriment to the public good, and I point out substantial detriment, or without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent or the purposes of the chapter. So the difficulty here is, Mr. Chair, as you just alluded to, what other information would help you do that? Because you kind of have to balance everything. So there's positive to the public good. There's FirstNet, there's coverage, there's, in today's day and age, people working from their homes because of COVID and the world and remote workforce after COVID, and people flocking major cities and moving to rural locations and trying to work from their home. So all of the things that are potentially benefits, but by the same token, you may want to consider anything that any of the abutters have to say on the basis that that might be your balance of public good. So I don't know that there isn't anything else that might be talked about that wouldn't impact that balancing, the weighing. In all honesty, our approach this evening was at the request of the chair, and to try and keep everyone focused on the variance, and that was the goal. And I'll give you the best example I can give you. And I'm going to use the term not because I'm picking on anybody, it's the term of their document. So there was a document submitted called opposition memo. Okay, so there is an opposition, and I used that term last time, and I think the chair was like, don't call them the opposition. Well, I'm only using it because that's the title of their document. So we're preparing a response to the opposition memo. That response that we're preparing, and our view, was based on the entirety of the special permit, and therefore we didn't complete it for tonight's meeting because the request for this evening was to stay focused on the variance and try not to go too far into much of the rest of the project. So when you asked earlier, based on who's not here and what are the things that we might not be able to present on tonight, that probably is the biggest thing.
But you're also saying that that impacts the discussion about variance.
It may, and I mean, I guess the question becomes, do you open the floor at this point to the other, the public citizens? And the reason I asked the question that I started this part of the discussion with is, would we have the opportunity to come back and present further and close? Because we want to be able to take in the things that they say, because it may not just impact the variance, it may also impact the special permit portion of. And again, this isn't an easy question. I'm trying to work with.
What you've indicated, you are preparing a response to the.
Yes.
Would it be appropriate to have that so we can have that as part of the conversation with the public, or can we get it now? I mean, I'm just saying, I'm hearing you say that, but does that give us information on what they've?
It's certainly helpful to hear what I mean, they're here tonight, and I heard what the people said in the last meeting. They came here and they want to speak, and we have people in the room, and I want to be respectful of that. I don't want to sit here and ask you to not let them speak until I write a response to their memo. But I do just want to ask the board your indulgence in that we prepared for half of the hearing tonight, and not necessarily all of the hearing tonight. And I don't want to be adversely impacted by seating the board at this time to give the public an opportunity to speak because they've been here and I think they deserve that opportunity.
I mean, I would say this, you know, I want to be aware of the time. But I also want to be aware, you know, this is our, you know, we've had multiple meetings on this and the public has yet to have an opportunity to speak. But I also want to keep, you know, my thought on that would be, you know, obviously there's multiple people here. Is if we do allow people to speak, that we have to kind of limit how long that if everyone's going to speak, you know, there's 15 people here and everyone talks for 10 minutes, that's an excessive time to ask for everybody to be here.
Well, before I close this portion of the meeting, if we do that, I want to make sure that whatever an issue is, we don't hear the same issue differently. One person represents that issue, one represents another, so that we don't kind of spend till midnight here.
And Mr. Chairman, so my second conversation with Chairman Singer was, you know, he apologizes. Emergencies happen. He would like to have been here and done what was said from the last meeting, but it's not able to be done because his mother's in the hospital. His intent was for you to finish your presentation, which you cannot do because of the previous guidance you received. So you have some folks that were not here based on, we were going to concentrate on the variance here. What Mr. Singer said to me is that the next meeting would be 100% dedicated to hearing the abutters. But it can't be 100% now because you still have some business to finish up relative to the special permit portion of your project. So, Mr. Chairman, I would recommend, based on my conversation with Chairman Singer, is that have the applicant complete what they can this evening. If it's complete, it's complete. The next meeting, which is the 20th, will be dedicated to their completing the presentation from those folks that were not able to be here this evening, and then dedicate the entire rest of the meeting
To the abutters.
to the abutters. That is what the Chairman Singer wanted done.
Mark?
I hear that and I completely respect it. And I guess just even by virtue of the tone that we started this meeting with the prior thing, I just wonder if I would think that some of the public that's here tonight, and it's not that many folks, some might wish to just say a few words tonight, say their piece and have it done. Some might elect to wait and kind of just hear everything more. I just wonder if we could spare 20 minutes to see if the folks that are here, and a few
Well, we
things.
have
I want
my
to
few
say.
people online.
Can I?
Yeah, out of those 19, like 12 of them are bad.
They do have counsel, and counsel just raised his hand. And I know you can't see it because you guys are facing this way. If Mike, can you stop sharing? And again, I want to be respectful, especially after watching the earlier hearing this evening. I do believe Attorney Campanelli raised his hand. I don't have an objection if you allow him to ask whatever question he had when he raised his hand. And I want to be respectful. Everyone's been in this room for a couple hours now.
May I be heard, Mr. Chairman of the Board? This is Andrew Campanelli.
Yes.
So I understand the concerns of the board. I've been listening to this entire hearing. I also sat through the last hearing and all of that. I think it makes some sense to allow the residents to be heard. However, I also understand that the applicant submitted additional material just today, which I've not had the opportunity to see. So I would respectfully request one thing. I'd like to address only one issue this evening and then wait till the next hearing so that everybody else can speak. But I think it's very important, given what I see as basically misinformation that's been submitted to the board tonight regarding the coverage issue. So I would very much simply like to be heard on the coverage issue and that issue alone, and the alleged evidence that has been provided by the applicant. I think it's critical to address this issue tonight while everything you heard from the applicant's attorney is fresh in your mind, because this is a very important issue. It goes to the heart of criteria number one, without which you cannot grant this application. They have to establish a hardship, and they can't establish a hardship if I'm afforded the opportunity to explain to you why what they consider to be evidence that is submitted to you has no evidentiary value whatsoever. I can probably complete that in under 10 minutes. So I would limit it to issue number one, the coverage issue. I would love to discuss it with the board again.
Andrew, just so we can see him. He's on a tiny portion of the screen.
Can't zoom down that way.
It's not the way Zoom works.
This is the way it didn't work.
Mr. Chairman, would it be acceptable to you and the board that I simply address the coverage issue tonight and nothing else? And then that would allow the other residents to speak, and then I would complete my presentation during the next meeting after I had an opportunity to review whatever it is the applicant submitted this evening, because it's unfair to me to try to address things I haven't seen. Would that be acceptable to the board?
Before we do that, I'll close this portion of the hearing for presentation from you folks, because they don't represent you, right?
Mr. Campanelli does
Yeah,
not.
so I'd like to close the presentation portion and open it up to him, and then.
So long as we're reserving the right at the next hearing.
Oh, no, I'm not saying,
Yes.
no, absolutely. I just want to be done with this part.
Yes, yeah.
So we can
Yes.
then include the public.
Yeah.
Okay, and what I'd like to do is set a limit of 9:45. We're done.
We're so.
I mean, can every, I mean,
That's my misunderstanding. What their attorney is saying is that he needs 10 minutes to address issue number 1 on coverage.
Yeah.
And then everyone would go home and come back on the 20th. And he would hear the rest of it. They can digest the data that was
Okay.
given out today.
I just want to be clear. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I
Michael.
thought there'd be a little time for the residents. If they do want to speak, that's up to them.
Well, I'm sure they probably will. And, if we're going to allow that, we need to make sure we have a time limit on it, But what Eric is saying in his interpretations, what you're requesting is 10 minutes for you, then to come back with the community or the abutters and have questions answered on the entire presentation. Because there's still more of your presentation that hasn't been done today, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That's acceptable to me if that's acceptable to the abutters, Mr. Chairman.
Well, can I take a 2-minute break? Yeah, I guess I'd like to, I'm running out of voice. It's fine.
Right there with you, sir.
I'd like to take a 5-minute break. I need to go to the restroom.
All right, so we can meet
I'll be
at
right-
8:36.
Yes.
And Andrew.
Oh, Andrew, thank you.
Yeah.
Are you ready to give your 10-minute presentation?
I am, if I may. I'd like to
Yeah.
ask the applicant and their attorney to put up back in view. It's 700 MTE megahertz map that I put up before. It's page 34 from your maps that you showed earlier today. Could you put that back up on the screen?
Can I don't mean to interrupt, Michael, but as best we can, could we deal with the information that's dealing with the variance, so that.
Yes.
Because this is for the variance. That's great. I don't mean it. Okay, thank you.
Yes, the first page, page 34, the first one you put up. Okay. So the very first criteria for granting a variance, of course, is 200-64A1, and that is this board cannot grant the variance unless the applicant proves to the satisfaction of the board that literal enforcement of the code would involve a substantial hardship, financial or otherwise, on the applicant. Now, this applicant comes before you claiming that its hardship is that it needs to build this 170-foot tower to remedy a significant gap in service, and they submit this map, MA 5014, as alleged evidence to substantiate their claim of a significant gap. I respectfully submit to you, this map does not serve as evidence of any gaps anywhere in the entire city of Greenfield. Now, I'm not saying there's perfect coverage in Greenfield, but I'm telling you, and I'm going to prove to you right now, that this map proves absolutely nothing, and here's why. First, I want to preface this by pointing out exhibits E and F on the submission that I submitted to you. According to AT&T's own data, AT&T has no significant gaps in its personal wireless service at the precise location where they want to build the tower. You can see AT&T's own coverage map, which was attached as exhibit E to my presentation. More importantly, according to the records of the FCC, based upon evidence provided to them by AT&T under penalties of criminal perjury, they have no gaps in wireless service at the precise location that they're claiming this tower is necessary to remedy a gap. Look at exhibit F. I believe it was current as of the past 30 days. Now, what does this map show? It really shows nothing, and here's why. Number one, if you look at the top of the map, it describes that this is allegedly AT&T's coverage on the 700 megahertz LTE band, okay? The first problem is that is only one of 12 bands upon which AT&T provides its end-use customers with wireless coverage. In my brief to you, I submitted the case of Extenet versus the Village of Flower Hills, most people don't realize if they are driving through the city of Greenfield and they're on a 5G call and the 5G signal strength drops too low to maintain the call, your telephone will downshift to 4G or 3G or 1G. And so as the federal court ruled against Verizon in that case, which was one of my cases, to establish the existence of a significant gap in personal wireless service, a carrier has to prove that its end-use customer cannot connect to a landline on any of its frequencies. This is 1 out of 12 frequencies upon which AT&T provides its wireless coverage. That's not the most important part. What's most important is the coverage key on the lower right. If you look on the lower right-hand portion, it describes as good coverage, which is above minus 83 dBm. dBm stands for decibel milliwatts. This is the signal strength reading. Now, I've been handling these cases for 30 years. I have never before found any wireless carrier anywhere in the United States claiming that to maintain reliable wireless coverage in a city, county, town, or village, it needs a signal strength greater than minus 95 dBm. In most jurisdictions, they'd say it's minus 98, okay? Now, the important thing to understand about dBm coverage is the lower that number gets, the stronger the coverage gets. And for every 3 decibels you go up, the signal strength doubles. So in most jurisdictions, minus 98 dBm is sufficient to provide personal wireless service. Minus 95 dBm is 200% as strong as that. They're claiming the absolute bare minimum, which they have in brown to provide coverage, is minus 93 dBm, which is 300% stronger than what all wireless carriers claim is necessary to maintain reliable service elsewhere. But it gets worse. Their map in brown goes down to minus 83. Minus 83 dBm is 2,100% stronger than minus 98 dBm. Now, if someone can explain to me why AT&T claims to provide reliable wireless service in Greenfield, it needs a signal strength 2,000 times stronger than anywhere else in the United States. This map shows nothing. This map was not created based upon actual data. You heard the attorney for the applicant say, this wasn't based upon a drive test. That's the gold standard, not a map that somebody created using a desktop computer, maybe using ATOL software. This map has no probative value. If it was challenged in court, no court in this country would accept it as evidence of anything. There's no data to back it up. This is why the map doesn't match the data in the FCC's database, because according to the FCC, there are no significant gaps in the precise locations where this applicant is now coming before you saying that's where this thing is needed. It makes no sense at all. And it's nothing to do with drive test. All you have to do is attach a recording device, put it in a car, and drive through the city. If and only if they provide that data to you, does it then place you, this board, in a position to determine if this tower is actually necessary. Number one, it'll show if there are gaps in service. Number two, it'll show where the gaps are. And number three, it'll show the boundaries of the gaps. If and only if they give you that data, does it then place you in a position to actually find that unless you build this tower at this location, at this height, it's going to be a hardship for the applicant. They can't remedy a gap, which according to the FCC does not exist. And again, the AT&T, the data that's on the FCC's website, Exhibit F, it doesn't mean this perfect coverage or seamless coverage. What the FCC's map shows, there are no significant gaps in the personal wireless service. And again, that FCC's data was received by the FCC from AT&T, who submits it under criminal penalties for filing a false instrument for filing with the federal government. So there's a reason why this map doesn't match what the FCC's records are or AT&T's records. And I've seen this all over the country, but I've never seen a carrier claim it needs 83 dBm to maintain reliable wireless service, 2,000 times stronger than what they need everywhere else in the country. It makes absolutely no sense. So I respectfully submit this applicant has in no way, shape, or form proven that without allowing them to build this tower, it's going to impose a substantial hardship on them, sufficient to meet the requirements under subdivision A. In similar vein, you ask smart questions. Why can't you use the other location? Under federal law, if they want to claim that turning this down would be an effective prohibition, they have to prove two things. That they have an identified significant gap in its personal wireless service, and that its proposed installation at the place they want it and the specific height they want it is the least intrusive means of remedying that gap. And they have come nowhere near establishing that based upon actual evidence, not desktop generated maps. And worst of all, they say they chose this site as opposed to the other one because, in their words, it's well screened. I ask you to look at their drawing C7, which shows this tower that they want to propose is going to tower 100 feet above the tree line. That's not well screened. And they haven't proven that it has to go here, much less that it hasn't been 17 stories tall. Any questions from the board? I'd love to answer them.
At this point, I don't have any questions. Not yet.
Nope, not yet.
Great. I thank you for the opportunity. And I again, thank you for the opportunity to speak at the next hearing where I can address the balance of the issues that are going to be raised. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
We're after the butters.
I want to wait till the next meeting. I have a daughter who's exhausted and waiting for me to come home, and I was hoping to speak much earlier, so I'm going to wait till the next.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll address,
So I forgot to ask, what's your name and where do you live? Are you?
My name's Diana. I have a business in Greenfield. And I'm extremely sensitive to that. I'm in the industrial park. I live in Shelburne.
Okay. So that's your comment.
no,
No,
that's not
you
a
asked me
comment.
why I wasn't, why I'm here.
Oh, okay.
That's not a comment, she's got
got five questions.
I think she'll speak in a minute. I think we, are there, well, yeah, are we ready? Are we gonna limit to 2-3 minutes so we can get through? Yeah. 2 minutes.
I apologize. I didn't ask your name to identify
My name
yourself.
is
No, we're trying to talk to the one behind you, sorry.
I'm Alana. I
Thank
live
you.
near the proposed site and I have a number of things I'd like to say, but I.
You're gonna wait till-
Actually need a moment, child.
Can I also ask when people identify themselves, if they can give their first and last names? Okay,
And address, please.
thank you.
Again, you have, do they identify their name and address? I should ask them again.
No, if they're not speaking, we don't.
If they're not speaking.
Only those that speak, we need their name and address.
Correct, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Jonathan Marin, 224 Avery Brook Road in Charlemont. My interest in the Greenfield site is mainly comes out of that I run a theater company and we have 2 employees who have small children who live near the proposed site. So that's why we've heard about it. I guess I'd like to just echo some of Attorney Campanelli's points around coverage. We walked around this whole area with a cell phone and checked ourselves. It's a little hard to videotape the cell phone in the glare, but there's always, 2-3 bars at least. My understanding is that there were some people maybe at the first hearing, which I wasn't able to attend, like maybe deep in some of the GCC buildings where you have like certain kinds of concrete, whatever, that maybe there's you can't get AT&T coverage at certain places in GCC. But of course, GCC has one of the most robust Wi-Fi networks of any organization in Franklin County. So no one's sitting around not able to make a call at GCC, of course. And the question would be, if the goal is to cover a few people at GCC, could there be a booster? Could there be an addition to an additional antenna? But yeah, my understanding of having lived in this area since 2005 is that there's, I've lived experience, there's no significant gaps that I've experienced in Greenfield, which I think is why you haven't had a cell tower application in 20 years. Another thing just on the coverage issues is that my understanding is that very soon, if not now, there won't be any drop calls anywhere in the world, including Antarctica and other places like that, because any call that was about to be dropped will be rerouted to Starlink and other satellites. I believe T-Mobile is fully pursuing that business opportunity, and maybe AT&T should think about the same. I got into learning about this issue because my My wife was injured by exposure that was below FCC's limits. That's not what I'm here to talk to you about today, but I've followed many of these conversations, cell tower conversations in the hill towns over the last 10 years. And my experience is that AT&T will not provide you drop call data. No matter how many times you ask for it, they will not provide it. It's not part of the business plan. If they started having to provide drop call data, they wouldn't be able to show you these maps to prove gaps in coverage, which may or may not exist. So I believe that the abutters requested drop call data back in December. I don't believe it's been provided. As Attorney Campanelli said, it would be very straightforward to provide that, but no, my understanding is no carrier will provide it because it's very difficult. You know, the business strategy is to sort of go the path of least resistance. And once you start providing real data with real numbers, that resistance gets to operate. So thank you very much for your time and for your service.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Do you want to have this gentleman stop sharing so we can sit down on your screen?
Mike, can you stop? Thank you.
The hand up. There's a hand up. What is it? Okay, what is it?
Andrew Vernon and Gutley, if I'm saying that right?
So we'll take Andrew first. Andrew Vernon.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening. I'll be as quick as I can. I'm Andrew.
Excuse me, could you give us your address, please?
Absolutely. It's also relevant to the conversation. Andrew Vernon, 17 Sunset Square, Greenfield, Massachusetts. I'm also an employee of Greenfield Community College, and I happen to live in the neighborhood. So a lot of things to comment on. I'm also a FirstNet user and have been for at least 24 years, probably 25 years since I worked at UMass Amherst. But I work at Greenfield Community College. I am a FirstNet user. North of 2 and west of 91, there are a decent amount of FirstNet users. But I can only speak for myself, so I am a FirstNet user. So earlier, a member of the ZBA asked about if complaints were being made to AT&T FirstNet about coverage. My answer to you is yes. I am one of the FirstNet users who's lived in this area who has made those complaints to AT&T FirstNet for many, many years. I'm in support of a tower. I'm in support of a tower because it is needed, and the FirstNet users in our community do need it. There are FirstNet users at Greenfield Community College, and FirstNet users do often go to and from Greenfield Community College, so that should be noted also. The impact of this was to, as one of the gentlemen was saying earlier, to help in part with coverage of FirstNet users. And that is absolutely needed from the Big Y parking lot north past Shelburne Road, along Homestead and to Greenfield Community College and that neighborhood. That is our community. That community also does not have sufficient cell phone service, including on the AT&T network, let alone FirstNet. So that should be known. An individual commented a moment ago about Greenfield Community College. It is important that or to AT&T and Veretti's credit, I think it's the outdoor coverage and interior building coverage are kind of two separate conversations. I will say though that as is seen on almost all of those maps, aside from the one at the hotel, that Greenfield Community College does not have coverage, let alone on FirstNet, throughout most of those, aside from the potentially proposed site at the hotel. So I'm in support of the tower. it is needed. There is not FirstNet service in that area, and there absolutely needs to be. That, in my opinion, that completes the hardship necessity. But that's just my opinion. That hardship has existed for quite some time. I can say that hardship exists in that area, that community. But that can't speak to the hardship of any safety concerns that may exist about where the tower would go. So it is absolutely needed.
Thank you, Andrew.
Is it my turn to talk?
Yes, it is. Could you give us your name and address, please?
So my name is Godelier Richard, and I live in 224 Ivry-Brook Road, Charlemont or Sherburne Falls. My husband actually talked, he's with you. But yes, actually, that was kind of my question, if you had testimony that actually some people needed this coverage, because, so I don't live in Greenfield, but we know some people who live around. And yeah, it seems to me that it would be good if the towers would be in some places where everybody is happy about it. So it would be good that you listen to, yes, the people living around that are going to have to be living with this tower. And yes, actually, my main question was is that do you actually have testimonies or clear evidence that you really need this tower there?
Thank you. Close the public comment portion of the meeting.
Yeah, for tonight, yes.
I'd like to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to close the public comment part of this meeting.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Oh, that's good for that.
We did.
That's okay. We're trying to follow the rule block as best we can.
I'd like to make a motion though to continue the hearing to February March 20th.
Should we consider the road first?
Oh, that's right, sorry.
Yeah.
So have you got it another,
There wasn't then question. Like, do we just have to kind of say to a future date? We just heard or something.
The next available ZBA meeting.
Making a motion to continue the meeting for the next available date for the ZBA, so that David can work with you there. Just, where's gonna be, was it March 20th?
March 20th, it's the next regular meeting of the board.
Here. But that doesn't work, I should.
Correct. It does, it does not.
Doesn't work, so the next one after that is April 10th. However, board members not able to make April 10th. So is there another date in early April that works for you?
Yes, I will make another day work.
Okay. You'll let us know the date?
Yeah, so we'll do a special meeting.
Correct.
And I'd want to check with everyone, to make sure everyone's here, but why don't I look right now? Do you prefer Thursday evenings? And if so, do you want to do the 3rd? And yeah, and then I'd like to make the arrangements now, so announce it so that you don't have to worry about having to deal with posting. And you can get it on an agenda. So if I'm going to just go grab my phone from the back and grab my calendar, that would be.
9 o'clock.
Well, March 20th will be for Oak Hill Acres.
Correct.
And this April one will be just strictly for the tower.
Yeah.
And I would say if at all possible, probably best if we kept it to just the tower. I'm sure,
That's it, yeah.
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 It's a special meeting for the.
April 3rd would work, and I would also April 3rd, and I would also inquire, oh, no, okay, no, okay.
Can we lock this in without David present? I wonder if it makes sense to just make a motion that closes this.
We're choosing dates because Debbie can't make it. I think.
We want to make sure that.
Sure, David can make it.
But the issue is this, though, the public hearing must be continued by vote of the board. And we need to pick a date now so that we don't need to send out legal notices and a butter notification.
I understand.
So you pick a date and then what would happen is on that date at that time, if we had to change the date, then it would be announced again in a public.
We'll do it then.
No, we don't. We would prefer not to wait till May.
No,
What about the week before? What about maybe March 26th?
We were gone the last week of March, first week of April.
Okay. And somebody can't make it the 10th. Is that person out the whole week or just that particular night?
Just that one day.
We could do other days rather than.
Yeah.
Thursday, yeah.
7th, 8th, or 9th, or any of those three work.
What's the Wednesday date?
The 9th.
The 9th, does that work for?
Yeah, no problem.
Can I ask one other question? Do you want to do it earlier, like at 5 or 5:30? And is that something maybe I would then work out with Mr. Singer about if he still wants that second balloon and whether or not people want to come and look at the site first and then come here? So maybe you want to see the balloon. You want to look at the view of the balloon from some of the homes on Newton Street and then come here and continue the discussion. I know that was something we had talked about for this meeting, and then obviously with David's concerns, we didn't get that done.
Great. Yeah, and starting the meeting like at 5 doesn't allow folks who are working and.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask that.
Can't settle their meals. paid or
You
whatever.
do work too.
It's just
Yeah.
Fridays. I says, trying to hard to navigate.
Yeah, that could be it. That could be speed for me.
I think we need to keep it that because these two. We're working, trying to, I know Debbie travels from work to get here to be on time, so.
I am, I mean.
Excuse me, I apologize for the interruption. It's Andrew. I'm just curious if there's not going to be a public notice, then, which that is what it is, then how on the 20th or April 10th, will it be the same Zoom join information?
There will be and I'm sorry, there'll be an agenda. You just don't post a brand new notice, which is why when you continue a hearing as a matter of law, you continue it to a date certain. It's just, as was
I
said
understand
earlier this
that.
evening, that's kind of legally how it's done. It's not, right. So you put it on the calendar, you do that tonight. And then it still has to be on the agenda, and the agenda has to be posted, 48 hours?
Yes, we post the agenda way in advance and it'll also be on the city meeting calendar.
Oh, so it is going to be posted publicly.
It's just when we say notice, we mean legal ads in the Greenfield Recorder and notifying all the butters within 300 feet. Those two things will not take place, but of course, the meeting calendar and agenda will be posted.
Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, I apologize. That may have been what the gentleman much earlier this evening was concerned about in part.
Yes.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew. Does that give you the answer you needed here?
All right, so you move to continue to a date specific and we're trying to figure out the date, which I believe is now April 9th. Is that correct?
That's correct. So
Was there a second on the motion?
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So April 9th. Here at 6:30.
Yes.
Wait, here, we're not gonna try to do John's on for this one.
Mr. Chairman, what's your opinion on that? We could schedule the meeting at the John Zahn Community Center for a bigger crowd.
Yeah, I think we need to have it the John Zahn.
Okay.
So
So the motion.
standing room only out there.
So the motion is to continue the public hearing to April 9th at the John Zahn Community Center
So there's space.
for a room for enough people to attend.
Okay.
We need to reschedule the Oakville Acres, the Johnson Center too for room.
No,
No.
Or are we gonna hold sufficient here?
I think so. The crowd, the people that were.
Okay.
It's the community that's here.
Mr. Chairman, we just need to get the vote.
Pardon?
There was a motion to, and a second.
And we did vote.
I didn't hear a vote.
All are in favor.
Aye.
I'll second it if you need a second.
No, there was a second already, so we have 5-member vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you for meeting me. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, we still can catch the last period of hockey game, right?